Welcome, everyone. My name is Tobias Ternström, and I'm a program manager in the database systems team. And I have...
My name is Rag Guru. I'm also a PM in the data migration team.
And so today we're going to walk through kind of the myriad of tooling and services and whatnot that we have that's related to database migration, and talk about a bit about when you use what tool. Is it for on-premises migrations? Is it for SQL Server upgrades? Or is it because you're moving a workload up into Azure? So first we'll walk through, or Guru will walk through the migration lifecycle. So like what are all of the steps from absolute start until you're actually done that we think about when it comes to a migration lifecycle. And we don't have tooling to support every step right now, but why we think this is important is one, if you haven't spent a ton of time looking at this, maybe it triggers some thinking. It also is how we look at where we need to provide technology and tooling to help you migrate. But migrations are always kind of a combination of processes and tooling. And like in my experience, it's, I don't know, maybe 30% around tooling, and then it's a lot of work around processes and like why are we moving, where are we moving, what are the requirements, and so on. And then we'll look at our database migration service and tools, the roadmap and timelines. Like always with timelines, these are estimates. We try to hit them, but we also want to be transparent with what we're trying to do when, especially in the near term. And then Chris here from Paradigm is going to go through an actual migration that he's using Azure Database Migration Service for right now to give you a taste of actual customer experience right now. Since our migration service is still in limited preview where you can go sign up to get registered. And then hopefully Guru will get it into a public preview very soon.
Yeah, no pressure there. Thank you. So, just quickly, from a migration lifecycle, just a quick show of hands, how many of you have seen the Azure Migrates announcement and all the sessions that were done? Just a couple of you, okay. So just to make sure that we are kind of working with the Azure Migrate team, we work at the data plane level. But if you look at the lifecycle, pretty much everybody does it, whether you're doing it at the app layer or the middle tier or at the database layer. You go through these 5 to 6 steps. First thing is for you to do the discovery, all your data estate database servers, and then you look into what are all the different databases that are out there, and then you go into the assessment. When it comes to whether you're doing an upgrade or you're doing a migration, you need to see the older versions to the newer version, what is the assessment compatibility and all that. And then as part of the conversion, we'll talk about what are the toolings that are available. And then as Tobias mentioned, you would do migration and then you would remediate a little bit and then you go back and then fix the schema and then go again. So it's a cycle that you go through, right? And then eventually when your schema is all ready and loaded, then you do the data migration that is part of the work that we'll show you. And eventually you do a cutover where you want to get to the minimal downtime as much as possible. This is typically the life cycle everybody goes through.
This discover part, it's not only discovery, sometimes it's more like archaeology, right? Trying to find where actually things are, and you'll find things all over the place that you didn't imagine you had.
That's right, that's right. I mean, a lot of the customers we work with, they acquired a lot of these assets through acquisitions, and sometimes they don't even know. The IT admin don't even know what servers are running what. So that's very true. So here, if you look at the migration lifecycle, we have tools like DMA and SSMA. DMA being the primary tool for your SQL to SQL upgrade, SSMA being the tool that you may be familiar with for the foreign sources like Oracle, Sybase to SQL Server or a SQL DB as an endpoint. And
what does DMA and SSMA stand for?
So DMA is the Data Migration Assistant, and SSMA is the SQL Server Migration Assistant. So just a legacy of it, like we have used to have a SQL Server upgrade assistant that kind of moved into a DMA namespace. And then SSMA is another tool that we use. And then we have this new service that you heard probably in Scott's keynote, and if you have followed our services in the past, all the way from build timeframe and a limited preview, DMS, the Data Migration Service. The key thing that we are trying to do is try and help you move into DMS being the central service where you can orchestrate your migrations primarily. Whether it is upgrade or migrations, DMS will become the primary interface for you, and then DMA and SSMA kind of tools still continue to work with DMS, but that will be more of your on-prem side to push the data or push the schema, but you will orchestrate everything through DMS. That's how you should think about it. But right now, most of the feedback is like, hey, just show me one place where I can go to and go through the migration guide, right? And that's why we just created a migration guide. So if I switch over to the 6, everybody should be familiar with this URL. If not, it's database migration, datamigration.microsoft.com. So if you go in here, you'd be, just let me take a couple of minutes just to walk through the migration guide here. It allows you to, first of all, at the top and then at the bottom, you have case studies of all the limited previews that we have done, and then partner tools like Attunity that will go into the details. But let's get started here. So here, it clearly, it's a very simple, intuitive interface for you to go through your experience and then decide which tooling to get started and how you would go through your migration cycle. Let's just say, hey, I want my source to be Oracle, and then I want to move into an Azure SQL DB. So once you do this, then it's custom created based on the source target pair that you're going to create. And then it'll walk you through the life cycle we just went through, right? First thing is, you want to kind of understand the rationale for migration and so on and so forth. It gives you a lot of the data points. And then if you go down into it, what are the tools, if there are tools available for your discover and assessment phase, schema conversion, data conversion, and then eventually to continue this process. So then you go into the next step. So here it says, hey, because you are using Oracle as a source, you should download SSMA, SQL Server Migration Assistant. And then it gives you a nice walkthrough of what you can expect and how you go about connecting to your Oracle, connecting to your SQL source, etc. And then it gives you details about how do we do conversion statistics, how much we can convert automatically versus what are the areas that you may have to do some manual work. So it gives you a good confidence in terms of how you can use this tool. And then the next step is migration. Again, this is about the first step was assessment, and then now you need to do the schema and data migration. What are the steps involved? And then the post-migration steps in terms of you may have to do perf validation, functional validation. Those things will get called out. So we'll continue to enhance this migration guide. So end of this session, you should be very clear about what tools work for what, and you can always reference this migration guide in case you're stuck in some source target pairs you don't understand.
Yeah, the migration guide is also important just because it's, like you see, it's a bit of an alphabet soup, right? With DMA, SSMA, Doobie-Doo, Doobie-Da, Banana, and so on. So we try to put everything here to just, before we have from engineering perspective, kind of made this easier, which will take us some time. At least here we can point out the route that we think you should take. And we have a chat button, as you can see at the bottom, where feel free to ask questions and complain if things aren't clear, right?
Yep. So switching back to the slides. So next. Okay. So upgrade and conversion tools. So in summary, if you're doing a SQL Server upgrade all the way from SQL 2005 and 2008 R2 to any of the new SQL versions, you want to look into the DMA and DEA. DEA is another part of the alphabet soup, Tobias mentioned. DEA is essentially the database experimentation assistant, which is essentially a A/B testing tool. So when it comes to upgrade SQL family, think about DMA and DEA. And when you want to convert, as of today, SAP / the Sybase, IBM DB2, Oracle, and MySQL are the sources that you can convert. When it comes to Oracle, you can go from 9.0, 9.3, all the way up to the latest versions. Take it through SSMA, and then bring it into your SQL endpoints.
And I think it's one of the most valuable things here is the assessment piece. So if you're just noodling on this, that's a very interesting first step to go through. And DMA for SQL Server upgrades, obviously, you just back up, restore the database over to the new version. But you can use the tool to find out if you have any, like the only traditional example is you use old style joins, right, in 2005, and at some point we took it out of the product. Overall, we're actually trying to bring back things we deprecated because we don't want to, break apps, right? But this will try to help find if you happen to have these types of queries.
Yeah, just quick show of hands. How many of you are familiar with DMA, SSMA as tool sets?
Oh, cool.
Okay,
like 50,
quite a few.
50% or so.
Good. The next one is data migration service. So this is the one that you heard in the keynote. Scott did the keynote. This is in the limited preview. So what is DMS, and how should I think about DMS, right? DMS is essentially a fully managed service, very similar to your SQL DB managed instance. DMS will be a managed service for you, and you can convert, go through the conversions and migrations from on-prem or your private cloud into public cloud, here being the SQL Azure DB, SQL Azure MI, and you can also go to SQL Azure IaaS VMs, SQL DW, pretty much all the Azure endpoints. And we're trying to support both homogeneous and heterogeneous migrations. I should mention here, you may be familiar with the managed instance of Postgres and MySQL support that Microsoft Azure provides. So that can also be a target for you through the data DMS service. On-prem being, you can be a Postgres on-prem or running in RDS, and we would be able to do the conversions and migrations for you in that case.
Our priorities on this is fairly simple. So we want to start with homogeneous, right? You want to get a SQL Server up, or you want to get a MySQL, PostgreSQL up. And then we feel so sad for some people that are stuck in this Oracle thing, so we're trying to liberate you there as well. So those are kind of our priorities, and then we'll go add more source target pairs as we go.
Yeah. And minimal downtime migrations, like as you will see in the demo, mostly we'll show you one-time migration, but nobody does a one-time migration of hundreds of gigs of database, terabytes of database, and take a huge downtime. So this is something that will get started from the public preview timeframe, little after. So these are some of the basic capabilities of DMS, and other things that you will see are ability to run large projects, put various databases into projects, and however you want to build your projects and then manage them, save them. Today, if you're using private preview, there are some limitations over there. The current focus at this time, we are focused on, like in the last 2 months and then the next 2 months, has been get the DMS as a service reliable, performant. So the thing that you can expect out of any Microsoft Azure service. And as Tobias mentioned, source target pair light up is the next step, right? Once we get the foundation up and running, and we'll focus on SQL to SQL modernization migration scenarios. Most of the customers waiting for older SQL 2005, 2008, R2 are the most used scenarios. And then when it comes to MI or SQL DB, those are the things that we will light up first. And then Oracle as a complete source to the migrations. And then we'll keep adding more source target pairs. We'll show you a roadmap of how things are coming in the next 2 quarters. And then friction-free experience. And if you're using SSMA, DMA, or sometimes people use backpacks and certain things you can do in certain tools, and not all of them are available in every tools. So that's where we're trying to kind of take away the user experience and then build it into DMS, be the one-all stop for you to orchestrate your entire migrations and get that friction-free experience for the customers. This is just a conceptual view of how the DMS, I won't go too deep into it. On the left-hand side, you're looking at various projects, typically based on the private preview customers that we are dealing with, and based on their feedback saying, hey, I want to be able to group certain databases together in certain projects, and I want to be able to run tasks in terms of all the way from discovery till validation. I should be able to do any of these things in any way. And also, when it comes to making sure the compute that gets assigned to all of these tasks are scalable and all of those things that you shouldn't worry about. DMS as a service should be able to do scale up or scale out pretty easily based on the project size and the characteristics of the databases. All of that we know based off the assessment and the previous steps that we go through. So this is just a conceptual view. And let me go to the next couple of slides, and then let's jump into the demos of these tools. So just quickly, DMA, Database Migration Assistant, essentially SQL to SQL migration, SQL to SQL upgrade is what this tool is good at. So essentially, you do the assessment, identify if you're going from 2005 to, let's say, 2017, maybe some data types not supported or some changes in the keywords. Those are the kind of things that you will get through as a report. And then maybe you'll fix those things and then can run through this and do the migrate schema data and associated logins, SQL agent jobs, et cetera.
And just to be clear, our expectation is that you shouldn't find things, right? This should be super smooth, but this is more like having suspenders, belt, and everything, right, to do an assessment and get the sense of it.
Yeah.
By the way, I should also warn you, because we have a bit of a not great experience in the tool right now, in the sense that in the assessment report, it warns you if you're using deprecated features. And this is, our lingo is not super clear always. So if a feature was removed, that's not the same as deprecated. So deprecated feature means we've said we're not kind of investing in this feature going forward, and there is some warning that we may remove it in a future release. But this list of deprecated features, they are still available in the next release, right? So this is not something that stops you from this upgrade. And we've stopped removing features. So our priorities are very clear. It's like security, backwards compatibility, anything else. So the only reason for us to break your app is security, right? And so we had some example with CLR, for example, for SQL Server 2017. And then we always provide workarounds for you to say, okay, I understand the risk, I've mitigated, then I'm going to do this, and then get through it. But that's a very important thing to just note.
Okay. So DEA is the Database Experimentation Assistant. How many of you are familiar with this tool? Zero. And
let me also add on the DMA thing. If you get a warning and this is a big problem for us, please send an email to us and say, you guys suck, and please fix this, right? Because this shouldn't be happening, right?
Yeah. So again, this is essentially an A/B testing tool when you're upgrading from 2005 to 2000, whatever the latest version, and you want to be able to do some basic validations, perf test. You can capture your current system's workloads, and then you can replay on the target workloads and then identify. So looks like it's not a well-known tool, and the idea is we don't want to keep releasing more and more tools and integrate all of this into DMS. And also, we've been talking to various partners where they can kind of plug in these type of add-on values, whether it is on the validation stage or on the discovery and assessment phases. That will continue to work with partners as well. And SSMA, like I mentioned before, anything other than SQL Server, Oracle, Sybase, DB2, and then this MySQL as well, we can migrate those source to any of the SQL targets, say whether it is a SQL running on-prem, or you're running a SQL Server in IaaS VM, or to SQL DB, and eventually to SQL MI that we will work very closely with.
And I should say that the MySQL conversion, obviously the easiest thing is just to move MySQL up to our MySQL service.
Yeah, so we talked about, in a sense, DMA, SSMA, DEA. Let's just do and then talked about DMS as well. Let's do a quick 5, 10, 15 minutes demo, and I'll walk you through DMA first, just show you what the assessment looks like. Most of you are familiar with, and we'll kind of run through the DMS scenarios. We'll show you how to do the DMS migration using a PowerShell. Most of you have seen the demos through the UI. Obviously, everything that you can do in UI, you should be able to. Most of you will be doing an automation. UI is primarily for demo purposes, or your kind of a POC you would do, but eventual serious migrations, everything will go down through an API. So I want to show you the API way of doing the migrations, and we'll go from there. So what you're looking at here is essentially a DMA tool. Let's do an assessment. Just create a test project, and then source type is SQL, and then let's say endpoint is SQL database. And it's going to check for compatibility, saying, and check for feature parity. If there are any deprecated features, you should be able to get the results. Actually, let me make this bigger. Yeah. Let's point to a source database. Use a SQL auth. And it's going to give me a list of databases that I am going to look into. Let's pick AdventureWorks and start assessment. So it'll go through a few minutes. Let me just, in the meanwhile, let me switch over to the PowerShell demo that I wanted to show you really quick. And then we can come back to this report. So in here, I need some. So let's log into PowerShell. So what I'm going to do, before I go in there, let me show you the endpoints. So I have a DMS instance already installed, and so you will see, you can go through and create a new migration project here, and then provide your source, target, et cetera, et cetera. Instead of doing all of that, let's run through the PowerShell way of doing that. End of the day, this demo, I'm going to just migrate 2 projects, 2 databases by end of this cycle.
Where did the PowerShell go?
Yeah.
Just have the bigger font.
I'm going to cut and paste a lot of, yeah. Okay, so there is a lot of, you may not be able to follow, but this is recorded, so you can go back and look at that. So let's see. So real quick, I need to log in first into that particular account through my PowerShell. And once it gets me logs in, then get into the subscription. You're pretty much familiar with all of these steps. It's asking me for my PIN. So the next steps are to essentially get the environment variables and everything set up. So here I have the variables for source, my target, and let's start through these ones first. Again, I want to set the right subscription that I have. All right, they're all set up. And then let's go through and get the source server. Essentially, I need to authenticate for the source server. And that should be done. And then the next one is to get the target set up. Again, I'll have to authenticate here.
And again, scripting is, as you all know, is very practical, especially if you want to run it again and again and again as you go through, right? It's practical, just have one PowerShell file.
So now let's just go through So now I'm just kind of have two databases, AdventureWorks and Power, and a couple of other databases. So I'm going to specify which database. I can even go into through the PowerShell in terms of what tables that I want to migrate, or all tables. So which is what essentially we're trying to do here.
And we will be adding to the tools to DMS so that you can generate these scripts, right? So you can generate the PowerShell scripts.
Yeah. And let's just run through all of them. So now establishing the connections, and now the source target, and then where the backup is going to be done. And now it should be working.
So why does it need to take a backup?
I'll talk to that in a sec. So the start migration should have started. Okay, so if I switch back to the portal, and so to answer your question, so I have, in this particular case, source is a SQL, and then it's going into a SQL database. We take the source backup, and then
it's going into managed instance. Right.
No, this one goes into a SQL DB.
I see.
Actually, this one doesn't need, if it goes to SQL DB, we do a bulk insert. If it goes into a SQL MI, we take a SQL managed instance, we take a backup, and then upload the backup file into a blob, and then from there we restore into the SQL managed instance. And for minimal downtime that Chris will show a demo on, we not only do the initial backup, we also do a backup of the log files, transaction log backups, so that when you are ready to fail over, the last backup transaction log gets shipped over, and then it applies, so your downtime becomes pretty minimal. So here it's already saying this is the project that it's running. So this one is in progress, whereas the first database is already completed. The second one is a little bigger one, and 21 out of 71 objects completed. So you kind of get the idea of how you can automate most of your migrations through PowerShell. Let's see. And then for SSMA, essentially, I want to show you how the SSMA experience is going to be for you. There is if you have used SSMA, this is Oracle to SQL migration. I know the session is pretty small, so I kind of pre-prepared some of the pre-work here. So I already created an SSMA on-prem, created the schema, recreated the schema in the target. So what you are seeing here is essentially in this project. So here it says source is an Oracle source, and then it's going into a SQL DB. And then you can create a new migration. And at this time, what it's going to do is we created the project in SSMA and then uploaded into DMS already. So now DMS is essentially in this step, it's unpacking all the project details. So your source, your target, as you can see here, pretty much everything comes through the project because SSMA on-prem, you've already done the pre-work. And then all I have to do is just give the password here. This is my source server, and then it'll go into my targets. It's validating for my source connection, and then it's going into the endpoint over here. And let's give that password. Oh, I have to do the trust server certificate. It may fail at this point. No, it didn't. So here it says, oh, these are the 5 number of the HR tables that are in there. So when you do run migration, essentially now it's going to go through each and every table from Oracle and then migrate over. It'll take a few minutes, but let's switch over to the slides. Let me see. Yeah, it says it's running, and you can see the, if you refresh, the progress as it goes through. It's already completed, actually, all of the tables. These are very small database for the demo purposes, but this is essentially, I created the project already before I came for the demo. I went into DMS. I launched the final step of data migration alone, right? So that gives you an idea of essentially how you did the DMA, DMS through PowerShell, how SSMA works with DMS in conjunction, and when we go into the last demo, which Chris will do, how we would do that minimal downtime migration in a real-world customer scenario. So let me switch over to the slides.
Yeah, absolutely.
For Oracle part, will it only take data, or will it also some way to confirm the SQL code?
So let me repeat the question. The question is, for Oracle, is it just the data, or it can also move objects? The answer is both. So we convert, when we say convert the schema, it's not just the tables, all the functions, Oracle functions, and the surrounding schema. Actually, I can show you. Let me launch. By the time of the end of this thing, I'll show you how the SSMA internally, it shows you all the other objects that it can move. We can move pretty much about 75% of all of those things, stored procedures, etc., with automated way. And we constantly trying to improve the conversion rate for the code as well. Question over there?
So is it just a flat database, or is there any complexity that goes across with it? So, for example, for partitioning or something along those lines, I mean, is it something that we built in afterwards?
Yeah, so the question is, just for the recording I'm repeating, is it just a simple database, or can it be a complicated, an enterprise scale? So the answer is, if you go, it can do pretty much. We have many case studies in the migration guidebook. When you, on the left-hand side, you will have case studies for enterprise migrations, and then we can give you more details if you need it on any specific areas. It's both Oracle and any of the sources that's out there through SSMA. One more question?
For example, Oracle, we need to pass the users to create an advance, or the tool is going to take care of that. For example, we have an application login that needs to use a specific application that needs to be created.
Sorry, let me repeat the question. Is for, do you have to create the users upfront? So some scenarios, we are able to get all the dependent objects as well, depending on your source target pairs. Is your question specific to Oracle or SQL Server, or very specific to Oracle? I don't know the answer. I can get back to you.
Yeah, let's take it.
I don't think for Oracle. For SQL, we know how to do all the. We'll get back to you on that one. I don't think we do for Oracle. Let me continue, and then we can take questions as well. Okay, so this one is super important for customers who are ready to migrate today, but either SSMA or DMA is not supporting the source target that you care about. We have a partnership with Attunity. Attunity Replication is a provider that can replicate data from any source to any source, essentially. They have many source target pairs that they support, as you can see here. For example, today we don't support Postgres or Amazon Redshift in our tool set or through DMS. You, as a Microsoft customer, can use Attunity Replicate for your migration projects. You have to download this tool, configure it. By end of this calendar year, December 31st, that's the offer that Attunity is providing for all the Microsoft customers. And you have a year to complete your migration. We know that migration projects take many months, and once you start the project, then you have a year to complete it. You may have heard of this before. If not, more details are there on the migration guidebook, or you can go to the Attunity, and there is a detailed web page on how to download and use the product. Okay, so this is the important thing, the part of the agenda for the talk. Okay, what is the roadmap that we are working towards? DMS is the service that we will continue to deliver on. As of today, we are on a limited private preview. As I mentioned, source target pairs, you never do just one or two databases. You have many databases. You want to club them together as a project. You want to be able to execute as a project. In the project, you may want to do schema migration, data migration, or only assessment. So we are providing all that capabilities. That's what we are working on right now. We are trying to get to a public preview by end of November timeframe. That's when we'll have most of you kind of participate, and then we continue to build on the APIs that I showed you. As we go into the public preview, you will get some of these basic things you would expect out of a service, and we'll continue to enhance the API surface as well. And in Q1 is when we are bringing in the ability to create the minimal downtime features, ability to improve the Oracle conversion I talked about. We continue to invest in here in how to improve the conversions. And then tools unification. As you can see, you saw DMA, SSMA, DEA. Why should I deal with all of these tools? Give me one place to go, and then you deal with all the complexities behind the scene. That's where we are embarking on, and you will continue to see. For example, SSMA, I already uploaded everything into DMS. Similarly, DMA should do the same thing, right? So we'll get that unification experience going on. And then in the current private preview, most of the customers ask for, hey, I want to be able to create a project, and then I say, weekend, run the migration project, right? I don't want to babysit the project. Those are some of the issues that we have today. We'll provide you scheduling. And then if something fails, obviously you would expect a notification to go out for you to take remediation actions, right? So that, and then from it's super important to understand that if you're using DMA, if you're using SSMA, all your investments continue to accrue towards what we would do in DMS, right? End of the day, we do need an agent on-prem to push the schema, push the data. So we will continue to support DMA, SSMA. That's, for example, Linux on SQL Server on Linux. That support we will provide, and it will accrue towards your DMS investment.
And it's important to note that it's not only about going to Azure. We care equally about migrations on premises.
Exactly. From source target pair, this is I'm not going to go through each and every cell. This is available to you. It's recorded. You don't have to take a picture. You can download this PowerPoint. But this is the timeline between now and Q1, Q2 of next year. And I would love to understand if you have any sources that you don't see here or targets you don't see here. We would love to understand what they are, what the scenarios are.
And note that we will also, for example, support Cosmos DB as part of this service. So we don't want to, have to go to multiple different services to manage different types of databases. So this is supposed to be a one-stop shop for database migrations.
That's right. And for on-premises, if you're moving from Oracle to SQL on-prem or a private cloud, all of these things are available today. We want to make sure people are not confused about, oh, I should wait for DMS, right? No. If you have an on-prem requirement today, you can do it. Yes, you can't do 5 projects at a time, but the thing is the ability exists today, and your investments will accrue eventually into the DMS. So with that, I think we have just enough time for Chris to come on stage. Sorry, it looks a little hurried, but we'll stay back. And let me just introduce really quick. Chris works for Caradigm, and they are one of the private preview customers. And we wanted to you may have seen, if you have attended Rohan's general session or the managed instance session, they are using managed instance to go from on-prem, private cloud, SQL Server install base to a managed instance. And their migration story was already told. What we want to demo here is how we enable the minimal downtime of their fully working end-to-end application. So, Chris.
Great. So I'm going to try to walk through quick. I know we're low on time, but we'll see if we can get through everything. So basically, this is the DMS service within the Azure portal. I'm going to create a new project, demo DMS at Ignite. We're going to move a SQL Server type, and we're going to move to a target of SQL Server managed instance. So we're basically going from an on-prem instance into a PaaS service now. And so it's really helping us with our migration into the cloud, right? Let me get this user. And you can kind of see it's very wizard-like, right, as far as how you can go in and what you need to do in order to tell it where you're going. Here's my target. My source is here. Just SA. So our application is, so we build healthcare applications, and we do them for healthcare analytics, and we can talk about that later. We do them for healthcare analytics and population health management. And so they're fairly complicated applications. We have actually 26 databases associated with this product. I've already migrated 25 of them, so I'm going to focus on this cohort designer application database as the last one in my migration process. And that one just holds some list metadata, basically. And I'll show you how this works a little bit, and we can see here. I think this is right.
Yeah, this is the one I talked about where we take a backup of the database, and that's where he had to give
so
the backup
I have to show where the backup needs to be stored at. So I need some place to actually store it. I'm putting it locally
and this is the initial version, and obviously, they do backup on their existing system, so we will be able to take from a backup location if you already have a backup location, which would be the case for 99% of the cases.
So I'm going to go ahead and actually run this migration. And this basically is just kicking it off, the initial full backup and restore. I'm starting from a SQL 2012 database as well, so it's doing an upgrade behind the scenes as well. Let's go over here to the box. You can see, so this is the managed instance, and this is the local server here. And it's moving everything over. What I want to do is act as though I'm the last user in the system. So there's a couple of things that I want to show you. First of all, this is our management console application. I want to show you what my data host string is currently. So you can see here, I'm pointed at the local instance. So I'll close this out. And I'm the last user in the system before I've locked people out. I'm going to log in, and I'm going to create a new list that'll store metadata in that table. So let's go in here. This is still pointing at our on-premise instance. I'm going to create a list that's looking for patients that I'm going to put into an allergy study. I'll put it into the Ignite folder so that I know it's close. And I'm going to go and grab patients who have a pollen allergy that are female. So behind the scene, our application is basically building some dynamic SQL queries. And it goes against some of the other database tables that have already been moved over, and you can see, okay, I have 259 patients here. So I was just the last user in the system. What I'm going to do now is go back to here, and I'm going to tell it, hey, let's complete this migration. So I have an option here to change the database to read-only. I'm just not going to worry about that right now. We're just going to go ahead and complete it. And so this is now taking the transaction logs between when I did the initial migration and now to actually complete the move, right? That's all done, looks like. So let's go back over here. Now to show like the minimal downtime, I need to change a pointer to my data host, so we've written a script that does that. So it's basically just going in, it's changing our connection strings to the data host, restarting a bunch of services behind the scenes just so the system will be back up and running once it's changed the data host connection string.
Can you show the target, see if
Yeah, let's go and see if it's worked or not. We can look at this while this is running. So our target and our source, so the target now, I should have shown this before, but now it has that cohort designer table in there. So it's been moved over. It looks like it's actually completed. Our script's finished running. So let's open up Management Console again and make sure that our connection string is actually changed. So sure enough, look, we're now pointing at our managed instance. Woohoo. Now the cool thing, right, is like, let's go in and make sure that my last data actually migrated over as well. Let's see if this is. Now I'm basically the first user on this new system hitting this database for the first time, so it's got to do some caching stuff. It's a little slow, but should be coming up shortly. There it comes. And still coming. There's my new list. There's the list I created. I can open it up. And I still have all the patients in there that I did in that query again. Now, the nice thing about this is that if I need to do a rollback because I moved from one instance of the system to the other, I can do my testing now here and make sure that everything works. And the only thing I have to do to roll back if I find an issue with my migration is just change my data host pointer back to the original on-store source. And now I've got a full rollback and I can just continue working with my customers, no problem. My only downtime as part of the migration is that final synchronization of the data that's happened before I turn the system off and before I made the switch to the connection string. So it's really minimal downtime, and I've now moved basically my application from an on-premise site to an Azure PaaS managed instance for SQL, and it saves me a lot of effort and time. So I think we're out of time, so I don't know if we want to go through these things.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. So that's the end of our, there are a couple of slides that talks about the application portfolio that Chris just demonstrated and their topology of, all the way from a small SKU to the extra large SKU. Key things, there are a couple of things. Today you have, if you are more interested in understanding SSMA in depth, there is a specific session in the same room, I think at 4 o'clock, So please come attend. And there is also another session about another customer scenario of migrating to SQLDB. And then there are some other relevant sessions that you may be interested in, managed instance, and how the application layer app migration kind of work together. We kind of plug into that as well because we have an API. And you can orchestrate the entire application tier to the database tier pretty easily with runbook kind of infrastructure. So that's end of it. And most importantly, there are some sources. Please give us feedback, and we'll be around to take any questions if you have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.